Thank you. All right. Can everyone hear me all right? Okay, great. All right. So I myself have been vegan for 26 years, and I've been having discussions with people for all this time, for 2 decades, about animals and our food, and the questions and discussions generally are about the same. People ask about the protein and things like that. But something started shifting maybe about 5 years ago, longer than that now, and people started saying things like, "Oh, but my eggs are free range, and my meat's organic, and my dairy, it's sustainable." And so it was this interesting shift in the conversation, and I really didn't know what to say to these, you say the usual, well, but it's still bad. But I didn't have specifics. So I started looking into it and doing extensive research. And that's how my book came about. The Ultimate Betrayal Is Their Happy Meat. And I did, extensive peer-reviewed studies, as well as interviews and going to visit these farms. And I basically discovered the truth behind these labels. So, and the work that we've done as animal people, as vegetarians and vegans for the last 30 years has been really incredible. And we're really in the mainstream now. People have heard of vegan, and they're interested and curious, and they know now. The majority of people know to some degree that animals suffer in this industry. And that's what this whole backlash really is happening in the industry. These labels are coming around to make consumers feel better about the products, okay? Even to the degree, and I really give credit to people that are seeking these products, because that means that they do care, and they do want to do something better for the planet, for the animals, to the point where they're willing to spend more money to buy these products. But getting into a little philosophy around this, it's really interesting that they are concerned for the well-being of the animal, and they don't want to see the animal hurt, but they don't seem to have a concern when it comes to killing that animal. And, so we're still buying the meat. We have this real, we put farmed animals in a different category than everything else, everyone else. We look at them differently. It's one of those things where there's rational gradations of transgressions against one another. Like, abuse is bad, but killing is worse, okay? And the idea that killing is the worst thing you can do to someone is not limited just to our human society, humans against humans. We actually have comprehensive anti-cruelty laws for companion animals that have the same philosophy, okay? Abusing a dog is bad. Killing a dog, that can be much worse. You can get a felony charge or, jail time. We recognize that there's that going on. But somehow in our minds we have exempted farm animals from this very basic moral understanding that abuse is bad, but killing is worse. Torture and kill a dog, and you could get felony jail time. Kill 100 cows a day, and you get a paycheck. So there's a difference going on there. It's an important distinction. Anyways, we've made farmed animals exempt from our moral understanding, and but can there be? So some people would argue, but it's humane slaughter. Can there be humane slaughter? I guess we can go to the next slide. I love this beautiful turkey. Turkeys are just the most amazing creatures. Did you know that the turkey's snoot and wattle, all that skin that's around their head, changes color? It's like a mood ring. Blue can mean they're calm and, just like mellowed out. If they get a little excited, it turns red. It's really interesting. Anyway, so let me ask a question, okay? Can there be humane slaughter? So would you rather, and this is, just hypothetical, would you rather be hit with a baseball bat or killed? Horrible decision, of course. No one wants to think about that. But most reasonable people would say, well, I'd rather be hit with a baseball bat. Even if it was debilitating, even if it would be painful, you choose to live. We would choose to live. And guess what? Animals would make that same choice. Animals want to live. It is the basic instinct. Live another day. So now let me ask another question. Would it be acceptable for a farmer to hit a pig with a baseball bat? No, of course not. And you ask anyone on the street, no matter their diet, they would say, no, of course that's not acceptable. Then why is it okay to kill the pig? Commit a much greater violation to that pig? It's an interesting question. So let's go to the next slide. This is a quote from my book. Discomfort with animal suffering leads to the inescapable conclusion that one should not participate in killing. Simply demanding sufficient exposure to outdoors, fresh air, food, shelter, and then being complacent in the termination of their lives is morally inconsistent. And I go into a lot more philosophy in the book that I just don't have time for now, but we're going to shift gears to the reality of what's happening to the animals on these farms and talking about that fresh air and shelter and all that, and are these labels providing for these animals. So let's talk about, okay, so when I'm talking about alternative animal products, I'm lumping in just numerous labels: cage-free, free-range, sustainable, organic, all that stuff. I break it all down in the book, label by label, and what it really means, but unfortunately for the time constraints, I can't do that here, so we're just gonna kind of lump it all together and talk in general about these alternative small-scale farming. So, unfortunately, there are inherent cruelties that abound in small-scale farming that just can't be wished away with a label, no matter how humane the operation wants to be. To be able to be profitable, to be able to make money, they have to have these inherent cruelties. The well-being of the animal is going to be compromised. There's body manipulations, separation of families, all these things, and I'll be talking a little more specifically about that. It was interesting, when I was writing this book, I thought that I was going to have to say again and again, well, yeah, free range is better, but going vegan's best. Or, oh yeah, or organic dairy, that's better, but going vegan's best. No, I did not have to concede like that, because unfortunately, the variety is so, it's so varied, the different farms. And some may be a little better, but others are worse than a commercial operation. So there's no regulation on these labels, zero regulation. The only one that has a bit of regulation is organic, and I'll talk a little more about that when we get into dairy. So let's get specific. Alternative eggs. So when I say alternative eggs, of course, we're talking about labels like cage-free, free-range, pasture-raised, organic, these kinds of labels that we're seeing on eggs. So one of the most inherent cruelty that is universal, no matter the label on the egg, is that no egg operation can profitably hatch their own chicks. Okay, they would have to invest in incubators and infrastructure, and they just can't do it. It's not profitable. So no matter the label on the egg, there are the egg product, they're going to source their chicks from hatcheries. These industrial, awful hatcheries. And let's switch, because I think the next, okay, go back. I don't have a picture of the hatcheries. This is my short version. I do have an hour-long one, but anyway, these hatcheries are brutal places. I think there is on down another place where we talk about the hatcheries. But there is. There's a picture coming up about the hatcheries. But of course, they're, indoor, the chicks are born in these metal drawers, and they're immediately thrust about on conveyor belts and metal machinery and tossed about like canned goods. It's really, really a brutal birth for these little babies. So let's go to the next slide and talk about cage-free. So this is a typical cage-free operation. Of course, they're not in the typical battery cages, which are, most egg-laying hens are in the battery cages, where they're stacked on top of each other and crammed in there. They got them out of the cages, but guess what? It's now just one big cage for thousands of birds, crammed onto the floor. They're still, breathing the ammonia from being in their own waste. They're still debeaked because of the overcrowding. They, have no ventilation. It's monotonous. It's miserable. It's a miserable existence. And as soon as their egg production wanes, maybe a year, maybe 2, they're going to go to slaughter. Chicken pot pie, low quality meats, that's egg-laying hens. Okay, now let's go to the next slide. Now this is a typical commercial, regular broiler operation. The chicken, there's egg-laying chickens, and the chickens that are raised for meat are called broiler chickens. They're different strands genetically of chickens. The broiler chickens grow really fast. That's what they've been bred to do, to be able to be slaughtered within weeks. They're full grown. Now this is the way we've been raising them for the last 3-4 decades in these windowless warehouses, crammed in, all these birds, thousands of birds, just a miserable existence. Now this is regular commercial, chicken meat farming. Now let's go back to the last slide. This is groovy, cage-free, organic. Okay, now let's go back. This is bad, commercial. Right? Okay, do we see any difference here other than the color of the chickens? No difference. And I saw this over and over and over again when I was researching these labels. Now that operation, if they wanted to make it free range, the only regulation on free range, and it's a regulation, but there's no on-site inspection. Nobody actually comes out to see if they're actually doing it. But supposedly the regulation is that they have to have access to the outside. They do not qualify how much access, what the size is, what the time, how much time. So a cage-free operation can open their doors to a little maybe 5 foot by 5 foot concrete patio, that's so unappealing no bird would even want to go out there. And they can do that for 5 minutes a day and call it free range, because now the birds have access to the outside. It's pathetic and sad. Let's go on. Okay, so this is the hatcheries. I did put the hatcheries in here because they are very important. So here on the right side, these are how the babies are just born. The natural way for a baby to be born is, of course, in a nest with the mother doting over her and him, and they're this beautiful bond of motherhood. It's really a beautiful natural process that is completely denied in all chicken farming. So these babies are, born into the world with no loving mother, and they're immediately thrown, like I said, into conveyor belts and metal machinery. Over here on the left, this is the sexing process. They immediately in the genetic egg strand of chickens will sex them. Males are tossed into one chute, females into the other chute. The females are going to be shipped by mail to egg facilities all over the world. The males rather, they're not profitably raised for meat. They don't bulk up fast in just a few weeks like the broiler strand of chickens. So they're worthless. They're worthless, and they are thrown away by the millions. This is out the back of hatcheries in the dumpsters, where they throw live babies, all the males, away, where they will suffocate on the weight of their brothers and sisters, die of dehydration, exposure. It's so cruel. A chick, this is the symbol in our society of gentleness, of innocence. And we're killing them by the millions. Another method of killing them is they'll just be going down one of these conveyor belts and drop into maceration machines, like a giant blender that just blends them up alive, and then they'll use the body parts for fertilizer or other things. So very sad. And this is the egg industry, no matter the label. They are sourcing their chicks from these hatcheries. Okay, I should have warned. I know this is a bit of a sad slide. Bear with me, bear witness to their suffering. I apologize. I'll try to get through it quick. So this is a chicken killing cone. Like, there's a lot of places now with chicken meat, the local and sustainable and all this, that are killing the birds on the farm and are doing it in these chicken killing cones and are considering it more humane. Okay, well, let's look at that. Is it really more humane? Well, the frightened bird is shoved upside down in this metal or plastic cone. Her throat is then slit. The blood spurts out into the catch sink. It can take minutes for her to die. She struggles in agony, kicking and struggling. And you know, it's brutal. Veterinary scientists say that throat cutting without prior stunning is really an incredibly painful way. What do they say? Must be considered an inhumane and barbaric practice. Yet this is the common method of killing these birds, both in commercial operations and in supposedly humane operations. Okay, let's move on from this slide. I know it's hard, I'm sorry. Okay, let's talk about dairy. So now we're talking about, you know, organic and humane, and American certified humane, and there's all kinds of labels that we're seeing on dairy that's supposedly better. And okay, let's go actually to the next slide. So this is what we want to believe over here on the left side. This is what we want to believe is happening, right? That the baby gets to stay with her mother, and they're in the grass, in the sunshine, in the field. No. This is not reality. This is not reality of any dairy operation. The reality is on the right. The babies are taken away, if not immediately, soon after birth. And you can see that this little female, she is still wet with her birth fluid. She was born so recently. They take the babies away. It is absolutely horrifying. And these mothers can wail and cry for their babies. But of course, you know, they're selling the milk. So feeding their babies their natural diet of milk would be wasting the product. So they have to separate them, take the babies away at birth. And these are the females. The females go into what are called calf hutches often. They're like, kind of look like big dog houses. And they're separated out, chained at the neck, able to maybe take a couple steps back and forth. So sad. And then just in a few months, they're gonna follow in their mother's hoof prints and go back into the dairy industry. The males oftentimes go to veal, the veal industry. That's where they get the majority of their veal calves is from the dairy industry, or they'll be, you know, raised and butchered for meat. So the males, again, are a waste product of the dairy industry and have to be sent away. Okay, so this is a quote from my book. I'm going to set it up first and read it with you. I interviewed numerous people for my book that worked in these different industries. And I interviewed a young man who worked in a slaughter facility. And this particular slaughter facility was, you know, one of those very local, humane slaughterhouses that did just small, they did pigs and goats and lambs and just small orders, you know, from small scale operations, and they often had either like local labels or humane labels. And he said that, you know, he worked down the kill floor a bit, where you know, they would take, like, say, a lamb and hang her up by her back leg, her other three legs dangling, and they go and slit her throat, and then on down, and different horrible things happen to her. Her skin gets ripped from her body and things like that. And he worked about 5 to 7 minutes after the throat cutting, and he said that lambs would come to him that were still twitching, still conscious and baaing in pain 7 minutes after the throat cutting. These lambs were in severe pain when their skin's being ripped from their bodies and everything. And so here's the quote from my book. Let me find it here. Picture a lamb, a symbol of gentleness and innocence in severe and prolonged agony at slaughter. Most people, if they saw a lamb in pain on the side of a rural road, would feel sadness and empathy and try to gain assistance for that animal in distress. Millions of lambs are suffering behind the dark doors of the slaughterhouse, but are in no less need of assistance. And this next slide is just a little meme I like. This is the one that they use on the happy cows, and this is the one they use on all the others. So it kind of tells a story there. So the last thing that I would like to talk about is something around our language. And it's something that I've been kind of feeling out and feeling stronger and stronger about recently. So I'll throw it out there as my kind of my takeaway for you. If you think about your language, let's go to the next slide. And try and stop saying factory farming. The reason for this is that I believe that factory farming in most cases now no longer implies a vegan message, although it did when we first started using it. That was the intention, was to expose the horror that's going on. And, and factory farming does have a powerful image, of course, of all this industrial and bad situation. But at the same time, I think people are now thinking, oh, well, you say, well, factory farming's bad, and they'll think, well, wait a minute, my meat isn't factory farmed, I get it at Whole Foods, right? Oh, well, my dairy's not factory farmed, it's organic. So we've inadvertently created this alternative industry, without even really realizing it, that factory farming means one thing and there seems to now be an alternative. Oh, we can, have our meat and eat it too, have our cake and eat it too. So I think we need to be very careful and use terms that include all animal agriculture. So when we're talking about, the bad things that are happening to animals, we say it's all animal agriculture. And include all animal farming and not just factory farming, because that's now in people's minds a very small, that's the majority of course, but they think there's an alternative. That's the main gist of what I'm wanting to say. So I go into so much more detail in the book that I just don't have time for now. I have an entire environmental section. I've got, I talk about fishing, I talk about biodiversity and all kinds of things about the environmental, and that's of course, sustainable and free range labels on these products that are considered more environmental. And I have a chapter about in vitro meat, lab-grown meat. So there's some interesting things in the book. I really encourage you to get it. I have it here today. I'm at the United Poultry Concerns table. I'm not going to go to one of these tables here. You can catch me after at the United Poultry Concerns table that is in the main area, kind of on the back wall. So I just need to get back to the table. So if you're interested in buying the book from me, it's $20. I do take credit cards, and it's also available on Amazon and online, in any regular book selling situation. So I really encourage you to get it if you can, because I go into, again, so much more detail. Also too, just to mention, United Poultry Concerns has created a short 5-minute video about this subject that's really great, and I usually show it, but this is just a very short period of time, so I decided not to show it, but I really encourage you to check it out. It's the same title as my talk, The Humane Hoax. So if you go to YouTube and just Google The Humane Hoax, you'll find it. Please share that video. It's really powerful. Okay, and I'm getting the 5 minutes, so we're gonna just wrap it up and I'll maybe take a couple questions. So we can go to the last slide, please. Oh, we're there. Oh, okay. This is a quote from my book. I'll just wrap it up with this. It's not our methods of animal agricultural practices that need to change. It is our unwillingness to let go of animal products and animal farming. Thank you. Okay, so I have a few minutes for questions, or a couple minutes? Okay, yeah.
When we talk about cruelty-free banking, I don't think it exists, cruelty-free banks or credit unions. So right now, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, vegans, people who don't want to hurt animals, their money is supporting hurting or being given as loans to enterprises that hurt animals.
Okay, I don't know anything about that.
So maybe we should start thinking about a coalition, because it supports everything you're talking about, and everything that people care about, so our money is not going to hurt animals.
Okay.
Because right now it is.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
How did you do your research?
Well, I have been I've been researching and writing articles for many, many years, and I did an extensive amount of research actually on the UC Berkeley campus because my husband was getting his master's from Berkeley at the time. This was a couple of years ago, 3 years ago now, and I had access to their database, which was awesome because it was pretty amazing what I found. I mean, peer-reviewed studies on organic compared to conventional and things like that. Oh gosh, I'm just remembering all these things I didn't mention, but I just didn't have time. But yeah, no. So research of peer-reviewed studies, and then I also went to farm sanctuaries, talked to them about animals that had been rescued from small-scale operations, and learned their stories. I interviewed people that had gone undercover in these places. I interviewed people, just random farmers, that worked at these places, and I went to the farms themselves. I live in Sonoma County, California. Everybody knows I'm not that far away. I'm sometimes speaking in Chicago, so I have to explain where it is, but everybody I think knows where Sonoma County is. And there's almost every farm there has some kind of label on it, organic or whatever. So I was able to go to numerous farms and actually see for myself. It depends, sometimes not. Sometimes, yeah, the farmer would be into talking to me and we'd have a great long conversation. He'd show me the whole place. Other ones would, cuss me out and run me off the property. So it just depends. Yeah. Any other questions? I see your hand. Anyone? Questions? Okay, I guess that's it. Thank you very much.